Hello everyone, welcome back to Upside Down Data. Today I want to talk about Polkadot and why I think it might be a waking giant. If you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like and follow us on Twitter where we put out regular updates about our risk indicators and more. So a little bit later on in this video, I want to talk about some fundamental factors that I think could provide a bullish tailwind for DOT and for the Polkadot project as a whole. But first, I want to talk about what our indicators here at the channel, or a few of our indicators here at the channel, are making of DOT's recent price action. So I'm showing you here the upside downside potential indicator, or UDPI, for DOT. This is our risk indicator here at the channel. I'm showing you here the price action color-coded based on the output of the UDPI. So higher values indicate higher risk, lower values indicate lower risk. You can see the UDPI has done a good job of identifying these high risk zones when distributing DOT was advantageous, as well as these low risk zones where acquiring DOT was advantageous. And what you can see is that we've been in the green zone for a while, and in fact we've actually dipped down into the deep green zone semi-recently, the deepest into the low risk zone that we've been ever since the summer. And we've seen what DOT was able to do coming out of that moment, right? DOT appreciated all the way from around $10 up to over $50, over a 5x move from kind of the bottom here up to the top. Are we setting the stage for something like that again? You know, time will tell. It'll probably depend a little bit on whether or not the broader crypto markets remain bullish, but certainly we've cooled off. We've reset the risk, and we could be ready for another big move to the upside. And who knows, maybe this is the start of something like that. So to talk about this a bit more specifically, I want to show the raw output of the UDPI across time. That's what I'm showing you here. Just the raw output, the UDPI level on the y-axis, and then time on the x-axis. And you can see that we were down in the deep levels of the UDPI, you know, almost back down to -5. Not quite, but almost. And now we're starting to chart a course back upward. So essentially, DOT had realized about as much downside potential as the model thought was realistic, and now we're starting to go back up and realize some of the upside potential that DOT has been accruing throughout this correction. Now, does that mean that DOT's going to go all the way back up to these super high levels? Again, going to have to wait and see, but certainly the upside potential seems to be far outweighing the downside potential at this current moment. So it'll be interesting to watch and see how that unfolds. And this is the long-term UDPI, so this cares about moves that play out over months to years. So it's more reactive to kind of longer trends. It's not going to care as much about kind of short-term volatility. And so really it thinks that kind of in a more macro perspective, there's quite a bit of upside that DOT could have that is realistic. So that's one. You know, obviously for anyone who's interested in DOT, you know, it's better to see the UDPI down here than up here for any kind of upside in the coming, future, in the coming months. Now, another indicator that's interesting to watch as well in conjunction with the UDPI is the trend confidence indicator. So this is not a risk indicator. This is getting us something a bit different. So what this indicator is designed to do is to essentially tell us how confident we should be in a given trend that an asset's in. So if the asset is in an uptrend, can we be confident that uptrend will continue? In a downtrend, can we be confident that that downtrend will continue? And so basically, if the asset's in an uptrend and the TCI is above 0, it's in the green zone, that suggests that that uptrend is believable, that there's not any reason yet to believe that this uptrend is going to peter out. But then if you see an uptrend, like what we saw here, just kind of a small uptrend, with the TCI being down in the red, that's bearish. That suggests that this uptrend is not very convincing. It's likely to reverse, and that's indeed what we saw. You know, the TCI flipped red all the way back here in the spring of 21, and that portended this massive crash back down to the downside. So the TCI is a front-running model. It gives early warnings, which I think is what is especially useful about it, because most kind of trend indicators out there are lagging indicators. They wait for price action to start moving the other direction to confirm a downtrend in this case, or to confirm a reversal to the upside. TCI doesn't wait for that. TCI is able to sniff out these reversals before they even happen, which is something I think is quite useful. And indeed, in the summer as well, the TCI flipped green all the way back here. Just a little bit after the bottom, it had seen enough and said, yep, we're in an uptrend. And then it rode that all the way up through here. But interestingly, you'll note that through this kind of last little leg up that happened around the time of the parachain auctions going on, the TCI was kind of more undecided, right? It did come back up and close in the green a few times, but it wasn't super convinced in this uptrend quite yet. We did move from around $30 up to around 50, so not a bad move, but nothing compared from that initial move from $10 up over $30, but being a much bigger multiple. And indeed, we can kind of see this now, especially looking back with what we know about what happened, is that this was really kind of warning us that this trend was not all that convincing and that a reversal was very plausible. And indeed, then we crashed all the way back down, well below these levels, down to where we've been more recently. But you'll notice that the TCI flipped green all the way back here and has been more or less green ever since, just once dipping down into the red, tiny dip here, which doesn't really mean much. But in this entire trend up, TCI is now in the green zone, suggesting that this, in its mind, looks much more like an uptrend than a downtrend, and that it has a bullish perspective right now. It thinks that this is a meaningful move to the upside, and it was signaling that this kind of move back to the upside was plausible all the way back here. It's been kind of maintaining an overall bullish perspective on DOT all the way from back here. And so if we take that in conjunction with the UDPI, we know that there's a lot of upside potential that's realistic, and we know that there's some reason to be confident in this uptrend we're currently in, given that the TCI is all the way up here. Maybe this uptrend will have some more legs to it. Now again, have to wait and see, but that's one thing that's possible. Now, another thing that's useful about the TCI is we can actually probe it and ask it what specific price level it is watching as being kind of the dividing line between bullishness and bearishness. And that's right around $17 as I record this. So that's the level that it's watching. If the price of DOT drops below $17, then the TCI is going to become concerned. It's going to think that we're now more likely in a downtrend than an uptrend. Whereas right now, it sees us being more in that uptrend than downtrend. So just something to keep an eye on. And again, it's a continuum. So kind of the further away you move in either direction from this price level, the more confident the TCI gets in the uptrend or the downtrend. So to wrap us up with our discussion of these kind of indicators, I just want to show the different time frames of the UDPI, so our risk indicator. I was showing you the long term earlier, which is sitting now at negative 2.82, but the medium term is at negative 2.1. Short term has actually gone up back to about neutral with this more recent uptrend. So essentially the way that I interpret this is that in the long term, DOT still has a good amount, plenty of upside potential left in it relative to downside. Staying with the medium term, this is kind of more weeks to months. But in the shorter term, it's getting a little bit more even. And so a pullback from here would be kind of just as plausible as continuation to the upside in the short term, kind of the coming days, weeks. Okay, so that's what our indicators are making of DOT's current price action. I want to now kind of combine this knowledge with just some more macro perspectives that might kind of offer reasons to think that there could be some more fundamental tailwinds behind Polkadot that might help it appreciate some of this upside, especially if broader markets remain bullish, if we don't get massive capitulations in the crypto markets. So I'm going to flip over to that right now. And where I want to start is just by looking at DeFi Llama. So this is the site that basically gives us information about DeFi and DeFi usage, total amount of value locked on DeFi protocols. And here we're looking at it by chain, so kind of where the value is being locked. So what you immediately notice is obviously Ethereum is the big kind of dominant force in DeFi still. Ethereum still has way more total value locked on it, over $124 billion, far exceeding the next runner-up, which is now Terra, with the token being Luna for the Terra chain. So let's look at where Polkadot is, and we can see it's down here sitting at 11. And what's I think notable about this is that it's been able to shoot up to this level in a pretty short amount of time, right? The DOT ecosystem has not been operational for very long at all, especially compared to some of these other chains that are up here in the top end of total value locked on these chains. And the part of the reason for that is DOT has its ecosystem running, and there's quite a bit in its ecosystem. So there are a few projects launched or listed here on DeFi Llama. There are actually far more in the Polkadot ecosystem that aren't even listed here that would add even more total value locked. I suspect DeFi Llama will be adding those with time, but these are just some of the chains that exist on here right now. So Moonbeam being kind of a layer 1 protocol, Parallel and Aster being more decentralized finance, but there are other DeFi chains or parachains that haven't actually been added to this yet. And so one of the reasons this is important is that one of the things we've seen with crypto is that the more adoption a chain gets, the more value it's generally, more value that gets ascribed to it, generally speaking. You know, Luna has been going on a bit of a moon mission recently, really performing well, especially in bearish conditions, or when the market was extremely bearish. Terra was kind of the one kind of defying gravity going the other way. And probably, in my opinion, in no small part due to the fact that it's seen a massive inflow of value being locked in its DeFi protocols. You know, Anchor Protocol being one of the big ones on Terra, which allows for really nice yields on stablecoins, the UST stablecoin, which probably was desirable in the bearish conditions. And we saw Luna do extremely well during that time. Its price really appreciated. But then if we just look at some of these other ones up here, you know, Avalanche went parabolic, and in my opinion, in no small part, due to its DeFi adoption. Phantom went parabolic back in the fall, again, probably on the back of its DeFi adoption. Polygon has done quite well recently, again, probably on the back of its DeFi adoption. There's a pattern here that you might see, that as these projects get more and more adoption, especially in DeFi, they've tended to do very well with their price. And so that is something that could be potentially bullish for DOT, which has seen nice inflows into its DeFi ecosystems. Maybe that could provide some kind of a more fundamental tailwind to help push the price of DOT up. And we also know that DOT has quite an impressive ecosystem that it has developed. You know, as the different parachain slot auctions have been completed and different projects have launched, DOT is finally realizing its full potential, right? Up until this point, kind of up until those parachain auctions happened and these chains got up and launched, DOT was really just riding on hype. It was riding on promise, I should say, more promise than hype, maybe. But it was riding on the promise of what it could be. The idea of being this massive ecosystem that would have a bunch of different independent parachains all linked together and all fully interoperable with each other. This idea of this kind of integrated ecosystem all running off of the underground kind of plumbing of the DOT kind of main chain, or the relay chain being Polkadot. And when you just look at the size of the DOT ecosystem now, it's pretty remarkable just how many things are being built within the Polkadot ecosystem. It's quite a large stack of different applications. And again, one of the things that we've seen with these other kind of chains is that they've done well as their ecosystems develop. And I would talk about DeFi ecosystems as being important, but there's other ecosystems. You know, NFT ecosystems are important. There's a lot of uses for these different chains that are not just being captured in DeFi, and also just some other more kind of practical real world applications that get built on top of these things. And I think what we've just generally seen is as these chains prove their utility and prove adoption, they tend to do well. And so if the Polkadot ecosystem is able to really kind of grow with what's already being built upon it, and especially if more ends up getting built upon it, that could really potentially provide a tailwind that could increase the price of DOT, increase demand for DOT, etc. Now, we're going to have to wait and see, of course. Polkadot's ecosystem is very much in kind of its fledgling stages, so we're not really sure exactly how it's going to go. But I do think that if the broader market remains bullish, and if we do start seeing more inflows of money back into the crypto space, I think it's very reasonable to expect a decent chunk of that money to fall into the Polkadot ecosystem. And that should overall just be bullish for DOT, overall being kind of the main asset within that ecosystem. So time will tell, but those are some things that I'm thinking about, which might suggest that DOT is a giant that's about to wake up. All right, if you like the content and remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like and follow us on Twitter. And remember, with the UDPI, we're all going to make it.